You are listening to the Coins, Currency, and American History podcast, presented by Littleton Coin Company.
Every great civilization leaves behind its ruins, its art, and its heroes. But the story of America can be told through something smaller, something we can hold in our hands. A coin. Coins are the fingerprints of a nation. This is the story of the United States of America. From colonies to social experiment to global economic leader.
Episode 15. Everyday Money in Antebellum America. The United States recovered slowly from the Panic of 1837. Trade resumed, banks reopened, wages returned, cotton began moving again. Eventually, the crisis passed and the country resumed its growth. But the panic left behind a revealing question. How did Americans actually conduct daily transactions? The answer depended on where one lived, what one produced, and how one earned a living. In the middle decades of the 19th century, the United States was one nation in principle, but many economies in practice, and its money reflected that reality. In the 1840s and 1850s, Americans used a surprising variety of currencies. Gold and silver coins circulated, but in limited quantity. Much of the metallic money in use was foreign. Spanish milled dollars were common, especially in the West and the South. French francs could be found along port cities, and British sovereigns in international trade. The United States Mint produced coinage, but not in sufficient volume to dominate circulation. And coins were far from the only currency. Hundreds of private and state-chartered banks issued paper notes. These represented promises to pay in specie, but promises varied in reliability. Notes from near banks were taken at face value, while those from distant banks were discounted, and notes from questionable banks might be refused altogether. In rural areas and on the frontier, transactions often bypassed currency entirely. Goods and labor were exchanged on credit, recorded in store ledgers, and settled seasonally. In the South, cotton served as collateral and as a benchmark for value. In the North, wages were paid in cash, while in the West, cash was scarce and land was abundant. Money existed, but not always as coins or paper. What held this patchwork system together was not uniformity, but trust. Without a national bank or standardized notes, distance mattered. Notes from distant banks were discounted according to the cost and uncertainty of redemption. So a banknote issued in New York City lost value the farther it traveled. A $1 note from Ohio might trade at 85 cents in Boston, while a note from Georgia might be valued at 60 cents. Or simply refused. It was a complex system. To manage it, merchants and bankers relied on specialized publications known as banknote reporters. These lists, printed in newspapers or pamphlets, cataloged thousands of notes, documenting discounts, counterfeits, and failures. Reporters were updated regularly as banks opened, closed, suspended payment, or declined in confidence. They served as guides to a national economy stitched together by imperfect information. Travelers required a different service. Currency brokers operated in major cities, exchanging distant notes for local ones at a fee. This buying and selling of securities in different markets, known as arbitrage, allowed the brokers to profit from uncertainty and take advantage of price discrepancies, and illustrated how fragmented America's monetary system had become. The way money moved through daily life differed sharply by region. In the North, industrialization had increased the need for liquid cash. Workers were paid wages. Factories required capital. Merchants relied on bills of exchange. Banknotes circulated widely, and discounting mattered. A worker could not accept payment in cotton or land. He needed reliable notes or coin to purchase food, clothing, and rent. Industrial capitalism required currency that could move quickly and settle immediately. In the South, the economy depended on cotton, futures contracts, and export credit. Planters often borrowed against future crops, settling debts when the cotton was sold. Cotton served as collateral, as a price reference, and as a store of value. Transactions did not require immediate cash in the same way they did in the North. The South needed credit flows more than it needed circulating currency. In the West, money was scarce, and land was plentiful. Settlers purchased land on credit, improved it, and hoped to repay debts with future crops or sales. Storekeepers extended credit that was recorded in ledgers. Settlements often relied on barter or delayed payment. Cash, when it appeared, moved quickly. The West's economy rested on time and trust rather than immediate settlement. These differences did not appear dramatic at first, but they would become more significant as the nation expanded and inter-regional trade increased. To the people who lived through it, the diversity of currencies did not feel chaotic. It felt normal. Markets adjusted through discounting, merchants compensated through pricing, consumers learned to evaluate notes by texture, engraving, and local reputation. The system worked because it evolved to suit local conditions. But normality did not mean stability. Confidence was the bridge between paper and metal. And when confidence faltered, the bridge weakened. During panics, people demanded specie. Notes were redeemed or refused. Banks suspended payment and called in loans, and the illusion of a uniform financial system dissolved. Fragmentation made crisis more likely and recovery more uneven. Scarcity of uniform currency did more than create inconvenience. It created opportunity for counterfeiters. The sheer number of banknotes in circulation, combined with the lack of centralized design standards, made replication easier and detection harder. Skillful engravers produced imitations. Unscrupulous speculators passed notes in distant markets where banks were unknown. Counterfeits circulated until discovered, often too late. Counterfeiting was not merely a criminal phenomenon. It was a byproduct of structural complexity. When hundreds of banks issued paper, each with unique designs and varying credibility, fraud simply became part of the economic landscape. In response, counterfeit detectors and detailed illustrations circulated alongside banknote reporters. The tools of commerce became the tools of verification. People had to learn not only how to spend money, but how to authenticate it. And while the counterfeit notes did not break the system, they revealed how fragile it was. By the 1840s and 1850s, trade between regions increased. Rails connected distant markets. Telegraph lines transmitted prices and news. The economy expanded faster than the monetary system could unify. The United States was becoming a national market, but its economy was anything but unified. And the gap between economic integration and monetary fragmentation widened. This would play a critical role in the decades ahead. The Civil War would test the ability of each region to mobilize credit, finance armies, and issue currency. The North's access to specie and later to bond markets would prove decisive. The South would struggle with inflation and declining confidence, while the West would continue to rely on ledgers and unrealized potential. These outcomes were not predetermined, but the foundations were already in place. The everyday money of antebellum America offers a quiet lesson. A growing country can tolerate monetary diversity for a time, but growth eventually demands uniformity. The more Americans traveled, traded, and communicated, the more the cost of fragmentation rose. Discounting, arbitrage, and verification became daily burdens, until what had once served local needs became an undeniable obstacle to national growth. The National Banking Acts of the 1860s would eventually solve the nation's fragmented currency structure, but it would take a war to force the unification. The period before the war showed why it was necessary, even if no one agreed on how it should be achieved.
In the next episode of Coins, Currency, in American History. The American West was seen as a sure thing, a national investment that would pay dividends forever. Everyone expected it to pay handsomely and quickly, until reality came crashing down. Next time, the uncertain fate of America's frontier.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Coins, Currency, and American History podcast presented by Littleton Coin Company. You can find out more about coins and currency in our free Learn Center at www.littletoncoin.com/learn. It's filled with fascinating facts about U.S. coins, world coins, ancient coins, paper money, and more, as well as helpful tips for collectors of all levels. You'll even find free collector guides, checklists, and virtual albums to help you get started and keep track of your growing collection. And while you're there, be sure to check out our online store. Visit www.littletoncoin.com today.